Hey everyone, Jan here, codingwithjan.com. So, over the last few weeks, we've been talking a lot about checkout extensibility, the new set of features to customize Shopify's checkout. Going forward from August 2024, these technologies will also replace the old checkout.liquid file as well as Shopify scripts, which will then no longer be supported. And many of you were interested in the new opportunities ahead, but some also have mixed feelings because now they have to undergo this migration. So that's why in today's video, I've interviewed two special guests who work at Shopify. For one, Ilya Grigoric, who's a principal engineer and technical advisor to the CEO, and Mani Fazeli, who's director of product for the two areas, checkout and B2B commerce. And both of them had super interesting answers to my difficult questions around reasoning, opportunities ahead, and their vision for the future. But I don't want to spoil it too much, so let's dive right in. All right, gentlemen, I'm extremely excited for this one. Today we've come together to speak about checkout extensibility and also explore some of the reasoning behind it. Before we dive right in, would you like to quickly introduce yourself and maybe also mention what you do at Shopify? Yeah, people on YouTube, they want to know why they should listen.
Sure. So my name is Mani Fazeli, and I lead product for all things checkout at Shopify. And I've been with the company at exactly 3 years recording today.
Awesome.
And I'm Ilya. I'm a principal engineer at Shopify. I've been working on our storefronts, checkout, and carts platform. And I've been at Shopify for 2 years.
Okay, that's amazing. Then maybe we can start a little bit broader. Checkout extensibility, in your own words, what was the idea behind that?
Yeah, it's a question that we've been asked many times. And I think that helping everyone understand where the origin story comes from is quite important. You think about today, there's two ways to approach it. One is to think about what the market is doing, and then the second is to think about what merchants are doing today with Shopify. So when using Checkout Liquid today, in order to be able to customize a checkout and make it bespoke to your business's needs, you end up being frozen because we have to pin you to a specific version of checkout in order to ensure that as we make changes and we iterate and we modify, it doesn't accidentally break what you're working on. And what that also means is that the customizations you make end up being incompatible with some really key important features of Shopify, things like Shop Pay. And you end up in a place where you have a maintenance overhead, where anytime that you do eventually want to upgrade to using our latest and greatest, you have to be able to test the difference between the changes you've made and the changes that are on Shopify. But if you zoom out from that, steady state of how people have been operating on Shopify for the past 7-8 years with Checkout Liquid, and you ask, what are the more broader concerns with building checkouts of the future? They really fall into 3 buckets for us that we think about being conversion, compliance, and composability. And the world around these 3 dimensions is changing. Let's start with the idea of conversion. So how is it that you can get the highest performance, lowest latency, highest throughput product with the greatest number of features that end up helping you get those customers to be able to make the purchase? Be able to use the latest identity wallet providers like Shop Pay to be able to get that outcome. In terms of compliance, that world is always changing, whether it be things like PCI compliance with the latest DSS requirements. Version 4 is coming in 2025. And that's going to have all sorts of rules around it, around anti-skimming, knowing every script that's executing within your checkout process. What's that going to be doing for you? Are you going to be able to audit and attest to all of those? You think about accessibility laws with things like WCAG and the requirements of your checkout being perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. I think their acronym for it is POUR. You think about privacy and data protection laws and the way that GDPR, CCPA changed expectation of how data is collected. You think about regional laws that might exist. So compliance ends up being a big burden that you have to deal with. And then the last one is composability, how easily you're able to make changes to the checkout, install, uninstall, how you're able to put your code into a sandbox, how you're able to version it, and then how you're able to basically maintain it over time. So we took a look at all these conversion, compliance, and composability issues and asked ourselves, well, what's the right way for us to invent the checkout of the future? And that really had us pivot away from this world of just, let's give you Liquid, let's have you just have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but then bear the entire weight of having to worry about all these concerns on your own. And instead, how is it that we can reshape things and take on more of the burden ourselves and solve for these conundrums, make sure that we, yes, pay the price of shifting the ecosystem away from the old to the new, but really allow extensibility to be the future, and it solves for pretty much all these things, and we can talk more about that.
Yeah, that's a great overview. I think the only thing I'd add here is thinking about checkout as a platform, right? So it is that you still have the ability to customize and extend and make it bespoke, as Mani mentioned, but it's about building a new layer of primitives, not just the raw access that you get with Checkout Liquid today, but give you a new level of primitives that allow you to unlock these things like conversion, compatibility, and compliance. Such that you don't have to take on the burden of like, how do I audit all of my scripts, third-party scripts, when I have to think about PCI compliance or GDPR and all the rest, and also bring the benefits of much better and improved performance in the new checkout. So it's a big lift, it's a big journey for us and for merchants, but it is a long-term investment and something that we're investing heavily across Shopify.
Okay, that's awesome. I think these were great insights already. So to wrap it up, I think, okay, so you said extensibility is important, then obviously higher converting checkout, upgrade safe, that's what Mani mentioned. And on the side, we also touched on ShopPay, because I think you said it fully integrates with ShopPay, which also is part of the conversion topic. I've read this in many articles. Could you elaborate why ShopPay is so important, or why that is so important to you?
Yeah, totally. The conversion side of things ends up being so important to a business because that's how you're able to make more money. It impacts your top line revenue. And for us, we're obsessed with the idea of how it is that we can help increase that. And a big component to that is bringing a network of known buyers that can be recognized in your checkout, enabling you to instantly transition away from having to get a lot of input and instead have all that known information pre-populate and be able to complete a checkout in one click. But the way that the world is shifting is one in which checkouts are becoming more integrated, more complex, more business logic that's executing in them, more customizations that need to live inside of them. And those are generally incompatible with the idea of identity wallet providers. So when we looked at this problem, we decided, what if we allowed the merger of the ShopPay experience to be fully compatible with all of the extensibility that we're bringing to market, so that every customization that's built for your checkout is fully compatible, can execute inside of a ShopPay accelerated checkout. And when you do that, you're merging the best of full customizability for the bespoke needs of a merchant with that identity being available at all times. And the really cool part about that is, in the old world, we think about identity being something that's collected or requested at the time that you arrive at the checkout. But imagine what that looks like as you begin to pull it up earlier and earlier in the shopping journey of the buyer. So now you arrive at the site and you could be incentivized for many reasons in order to tell the site who you are, whether it be customizations, whether it be offers, whatever that trigger might be. It gets you to say, yes, I am this person. And we have a feature in Shopify called Sign In with Shop. So as soon as you do that, now we're able to carry that through all the way to your checkout without you ever having to sacrifice any of those customizations. And that's why it's important to us. And that really makes us the world's first one-click checkout that is fully customizable. We're not aware of anyone else who's approaching it that way. And we know that, the fact that you have to go to the shop.app domain and we have to have all of our security in line to be able to execute your code in our environment to offer you this extensibility is why the system is designed the way that it is.
Okay.
If you look at some of the comparables, I think many merchants are facing a tough choice, which is they know that buyers like the convenience of accelerated wallets, choose your platform wallet, but then they have to sacrifice functionality in their store. Let's say you have a great cross-selling, upselling, bundle something logic, or just bespoke business logic that Mani mentioned. You have to forfeit that today, but you don't have to. That's our vision with ShopPay, because everything's integrated. All of these apps and all the extensibility applies there as well. And you get the best of both.
Okay, that sounds great. I think I've also seen, like doing my research, I've seen some statistics like how much ShopPay converts better. I would definitely try to put the screenshots here. Out of my own curiosity, how many people or how many teams are working on on checkout in Shopify? Is that something you can speak on?
Yeah, so the way that we think about a checkout is it has two parts. There's the orchestration engine that lives inside of bringing together all the different components, features, and capabilities of Shopify to bear, and then all the teams that are working on those individual bits. So we break it up into the team that worries about the orchestration engine, the teams that worry about the UI layer that sits on top, and the API layer that sits underneath, and then many other teams around the organization who are contributing with functionality to that area. For example, people who work on the payment gateway and payment platforms that exist in the system. People who work on everything from address validation through to support of bundles, support of subscriptions, teams that are working on all of our dynamic and static shipping rate calculators and being able to enable experiences that end-to-end allow for pickup in store, allow for parcel locker pickup points. So if you were to tally it all up, it's probably on the order of 1,000 engineers who end up touching the capabilities that you end up using inside of the Shopify checkout. And then we have a dedicated team worried about, again, that UI orchestration and API layers. That's probably at any given time a couple of hundred people.
That's insane. That's a lot.
Yeah, I think there's maybe only a few other organizations, probably less than 5 in the world, that have more engineers coming to work every single day, living and breathing, thinking how to make checkout better, which is the advantage that you get of working with Shopify, right? It is the velocity, which you see in the edition releases of just tidal wave of feature that is being added to the platform.
All right, this was awesome. And yeah, definitely a ton of people. I couldn't even imagine managing these many people. We have only a small team. But going forward with all these engineers, there must be a goal or a vision you work towards. Is there a vision maybe for the next 3 years? Is that something you can speak on?
Yeah, the vision for the next 3 years, or the vision that we have in general, is one that drives all the decision-making that we have inside of checkout. So we believe that Shopify should be the singular checkout for every sales channel of a merchant, pretty much operating at any scale, with the world's best conversion rate. So if you think about that being the vision that we make all of our decisions with, that's where the conversion compliance composability stuff comes in. And that's where the alignment of all the priorities we execute against, the work we've done, for example, with the one-page checkout that is gradually rolling out to the market, the work that we've done with everything to do with extensibility, the Shop Pay compatibility, but also a whole bunch of other exciting projects that we can't yet talk about. But if you stay tuned, you're going to hear more and more coming on top of this checkout platform. And of course, the other thing about having all those engineers that you were talking is that we're operating in a world where over 10% of the commerce of the e-commerce of the US goes through Shopify's checkout. And as we think about numbers of that magnitude, and then you multiply it by the global scale that we operate at, you think about all the jurisdictions, all the verticals, the segments, direct to consumer, B2B wholesale that we operate in, that's where we need these really fantastic teams to come together and be able to make commerce better for everyone on all those dimensions. And then Ilya, what thoughts do you have about the way that we end up managing a system this big?
I think the key thing to recognize here is we're building a capital P platform. We're turning checkout into a platform. So there is a very long list of capabilities and features that we're looking at that merchants and partners are telling us that they want in checkout. And we will for sure be implementing some of them as first-party features because they're core and they're just common toil that every merchant needs to implement. But there's no way we can implement all of them, nor do we have to. I think this is the key part. So our journey over the next 3 years, 5 years, is to uncover the right primitives that we can expose to allow the third-party developers to then build on top of checkout capabilities. So this is the App Store, right? The App Store is coming to checkout. It's here, it's nascent, but this is the big, it's both the biggest opportunity for developers today, because it's an entirely new market, something you couldn't do before. You can now deploy an app that will seamlessly integrate with merchants checkout. It'll adopt all the branding APIs and it'll just look right. You can install it. You can expose UI configuration in checkout. So it's no longer something you have to handhold the merchant through and deploy custom code. So it is a massive opportunity in that regard. And what our work here is to uncover what those right primitives are, what is the right DX, what is the right tooling, what is the right infrastructure. And yeah, and I know you've been building an app or experimenting with an app, so I'm curious to hear your journey there and your feedback. But it is that platform. And I think one thing I would ask of developers is this is a rapidly evolving platform too. So if you looked at our documentation 6 months ago and formed an opinion, that opinion is likely woefully out of date by now. And you should go and revisit those docs, and you'll find that there's a whole lot of new things available there. And I think the same will apply 6 months into the future. If we fast forward and have this conversation in January of next year, we'll likely see a completely different set of capabilities, much richer set of capabilities.
Yeah, and that actually reminds me that some of the big things that we achieved by moving to the platform that powers checkout extensibility is one in which, in the conversion bucket we talked about, is like performance. We've the new single page app experience for the front end, it cuts latency in half for interactions that you see in checkout. The API layer that we've built to support extensibility is capable of doing 10 times the throughput that the older checkout APIs were able to support. We have entire new features that we're building that I'd love to tease, but not just yet, that are built on top of this new architecture that are previously unseen capabilities in Shopify's checkout that we think a lot of merchants are going to be pretty excited about. And again, the idea that now we're able to offer this with rapid iteration from our part, being like the uptake from the merchant base can be nearly instant, because they no longer end up having to be in this place where they choose between their customizations or the feature enhancements that we make. That's what upgrade safety is all about, like you said, Jan.
That sounds super exciting, especially all the new features you mentioned. I mean, I will definitely follow up with that, but the suspense, it's killing me. And yeah, definitely looking forward to that. So, okay, we've already come a long way now. Everything we've covered so far provided more insights about like reasoning than, let's say, the documentation does. But would you also be comfortable with, yeah, some potentially inconvenient questions?
Yeah, of course.
All right, let's bring them on. So we've been talking about the merchant side a lot, like how better convert, or like how migrating could even be in their interest and benefit them through faster checkout, higher conversion rates, and so on and so forth. But as developers, we also have to learn a lot of new technologies, learn about new features. So how do you plan on supporting developers?
So there's the usual things that you would expect. We are investing heavily into great documentation, code examples, and all the rest. Also, thank you for doing the videos and helping spread the knowledge as well. So the community has been a great help in that regard too. But we know that we can do more, and we are thinking actively about how to improve that state. Also DX, right? Like we're rapidly evolving on DX, and we're taking all the feedback from early developers like to heart and trying to figure out how we can make this better. Good example of that is we started with like functions, started as WASM, right? And like super fast, it's the right platform primitive. It gives us the right guarantees and runtime safety that we needed to even be able to expose this. But we quickly discovered that there's only so many developers that are eager to adopt like the low-level WASM runtime. So then came Rust, then came TypeScript, right? And like each one of these is a big step in terms of improving ergonomics and DX. So I think it's across all of those dimensions. You'll see us building better APIs, more capabilities, better tooling, better infrastructure, better linters. I would, in this day and age, be remiss not to mention our LLM-powered coding assistants. At Shopify, we've been eager adopters of this technology just for our own development. You've seen us tease some of the capabilities that we've been playing with for merchants and developers as well in the last edition. Like anything from type in a sentence and we'll write the GraphQL query for you, to let's transform a theme. So we're actively exploring those opportunities as well. So I think you'll see us innovating in that space and helping lower the bar and the complexity for developers to get started. And I'll defer to Mani and the merchants.
Yeah, there's a lot that we also believe need to be done for merchants and the agencies that support them. Not only is it all the documentation you get on shopify.dev, the tutorials that we build, we have toolkits that help with changing over from Checkout Liquid into using Checkout Extensibility. We're building additional tooling that we'll be releasing that will help with, in some instances, accelerating the audit that a person does that says, hey, here's something we recognize that you were doing in the old system. Here's how you'll be able to do it with the new system. Those are some things that we're experimenting with internally. We're also running a series of webinars. I think we completed over 8 webinars just in the month of May and into early June that target the audience and try to educate and expose all the different capabilities we've brought to life, the latest things we've launched. Like Ilya said, it's a platform that's shifting over time. So we have to be good about continuously pushing what updates we have. We have a public roadmap on shopify.dev. We'll be updating that roadmap continuously again to make sure that everyone has visibility about new features coming out. And then we, excuse me, we will also be doing more work around building playbooks that, as we discover how more and more merchants and agencies are solving problems using the new platform that we think are really good and repeatable, something easy that we could be telling the whole world about, we'll have playbooks that say, hey, we've seen other people solve the problem like this. Or we'll be looking and seeing, what kind of app developers are bringing really spectacular new use cases to the market, finding opportunities to see if there's any kind of co-marketing we could do with them, or how to get more broad reach understanding of this entire new platform capability that didn't exist before, which is the search, find, click, install, configure, launch, as opposed to needing to do bespoke editing, being in a template editor, having, brittle and, little code reuse scenarios that you saw with Liquid, instead solving that with the app model that we're using with Extensibility. So lots of stuff that we know we have to continuously be the advocates and hopefully being able to support people as they're making the transition.
Yeah, as people think about this decision, right, it's kind of like 2 variables. There's a cost and there's a utility, right? So our objective is to lower the cost through better tooling, better documentation, education, and all of those things. The utility is what Mani is referring to, like just helping folks understand that, like, yes, there's work here, absolutely, right? But you have to consider that the steady state of what you have right now today is also not free. Like, there is maintenance. We speak to merchants like every day that tell us that the code that they wrote, they check out Liquid code, is very brutal. They're afraid to touch it. They can't touch it, but they'd like to get on the latest and greatest. Then we have a conversation about all the compliance things that Mani talked about, right? Like this new PCI compliance is coming. It's a future cost that many folks are deferring. And it actually imposes a huge burden on like understanding what scripts are running, what change processes you have. So you're going to have to go through that and navigate that either next year or latest 2025 when it goes into effect as mandatory requirement. So by adopting this new extensibility platform, you basically solve for that right off the bat, because we provide an intermediate layer that gives you the GDPR compliance through pixels, or at least all the transparency that you need to be compliant. It solves for accessibility. It's easy to install. It addresses the PCI angles. So you have to take a holistic view and take a slightly longer view than just say, like, this month I need to do this work. This is the cost, right? But you have to look at your cost of ownership. What is the actual cost to implement, and what's going to cost you a year from now if you keep punting this problem?
Yeah, that's really well said, Ilya. Especially like we see our job at Shopify being able to see around 2 corners and looking out for merchants well in advance of anything that they realize that they're going to have to do. And compliance does end up being a big part of that. And we were talking about GDPR and web pixels, but the other angle of it is data governance. So in extensibility, the UI extension APIs that allow for data read-write access are fully controlled, which means that when you install an app, you'll have an understanding of what data they're trying to access. And it reduces this overhead that you have to otherwise do script auditing with any third-party vendor that you're trying to just like copy paste some snippet into Liquid, which we just think that's such an old world way of working.
Guilty. Yeah. No, definitely great points. Yeah, just to elaborate on a few of those, especially when you mentioned the documentation, I think that has to be an integral part of helping developers. And personally, I really loved all the tutorials with specific use cases. So I think the more we can have of these, the better. And yeah, you also mentioned the roadmap, which is pretty important, because people were asking a lot, hey, when is this feature coming, or when is this area unlocked, which is stated in the roadmap. And yeah, maintaining liquid files or checkout.liquid files in agency setups, and yeah, the problems that arise of that. I've definitely seen some of these from my agency time, so definitely can relate. Okay, I think these were awesome points. And now we've also touched on agency owners. And yeah, some of them might be concerned about bringing this to their clients. There are some associated costs we've talked about. There's new technology they have to learn. So my question would be, what would you say to someone like that?
Yeah, I think that I would lean back on some of the topics we've already brought up, that yes, there is an associated cost. There's no denying that. We know that there's going to be some effort to have any merchant be able to move over to extensibility. But really, it's also about the positives, the gains, the value that comes with doing so. And reiterating the idea of conversion ends up being a big one. The increased performance, the lower latency, the higher throughput, the new feature access, the compatibility with Shop Pay, that's going to be a game changer for many merchants. And that's valued right out the gate. That's even before you approach helping their clients understand about compliance burdens. We talked about accessibility, we talked about data privacy, but also PCI DSS version 4, which kicks in on April 2025. Those are all things that all these merchants are going to have to deal with, and they're going to bear that burden, and the agencies are going to bear the burden with them. So there's opportunities to help the merchants understand, here's what you're able to unlock. But really, the other big one that the agencies themselves get to take advantage of is composability. So yes, there's a little bit of retooling and understanding some new tech. We've heard feedback about, hey, maybe some of the technical talent in the team is not familiar with some of the backend tech that we're bringing to bear, and the front end tech that they're familiar with, standard JavaScript, CSS, HTML. Now they got to learn about some of our UI components. They got to learn about our branding API and such. But as you begin to do that, you're able to unlock this idea of the composable, app-based, reusable, versioned, code isolated development, which did not exist with Liquid, and that allows for a much better developer experience in our opinion, and the feedback that we've gotten back so far. But also, you'll in just a few weeks, we're going to be announcing a series of product launches that also make the development experience much better, including for things like how much energy it takes to build an app will be reduced. The amount of effort that's required to use functions and UI extensions, that effort will be reduced. The ability to deploy a single custom app across many stores in the same organization will be reduced. So we're also taking feedback of this nature, listening to the agencies, and making sure we incorporate that back in. And of course, the last thing is the unlock that's opened up for those agencies, which is if they see opportunity for building something once but deploying it many times, they now have access to take that energy, pour it into a really good quality application that then they're able to submit to the Shopify App Store and potentially have new lines of revenue. We know this isn't the right answer for some agencies. That's just not the model that they want to operate in. But that doesn't mean it's not the right answer for others who indeed are looking for new ways to monetize and expand their business as well. Ilya, what do you think?
I think you nailed it there. It's all about the value, right? So if I was on the agency side today, I would focus on actually educating a lot of the merchants, because many of them actually don't realize many of the ailments that are currently hurting them. The point is to unlock access to a whole set of new capabilities, lower cost of ownership, and all the rest. So this is where we have to circle back to all the things that Mani said and think about, what does the future look like a couple of years from now? Oh, there's all these regulations coming in. How are you guys handling GDPR today? You're not, or maybe you are. Well, if you're adopt web pixels, a lot of that is taken care for you, right? At least it makes that compliance layer a lot simpler. There is conversion. Many merchants actually don't realize that they lock themselves onto a particular release of Shopify checkout. They're not getting the upgrades and all of the latest and greatest that they're hearing repeatedly from us on what makes checkout great. So it's all of those things combined together. It's the value proposition of think about checkout in the future, right? Like a year from now, 2 years from now, where do you want to be? Identity is the future. You want to layer in the great wallet experience and not have to trade off accelerated checkout versus functionality. You want composability. You want the upgrade functionality. You're selling that value, not the cost. And there is a cost, obviously, but if you think long enough and apply the right span, I think you'll find that the actual cost of ownership is actually very valuable and works in your favor.
Okay, I love that perspective from both of you, like focusing on the opportunities ahead, and then also with all the incoming compliance regulations, GDPR. I mean, I'm German, we know all about GDPR. Okay, we've already come a long way. We've been talking about reasoning, we've been talking about benefits, we've been talking about how Shopify is going to support developers as well as agency owners. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys for taking the time today. Actually means a lot. And therefore, I think a fair thing to do would be, do you have anything to say to the developer community or anything you want to share?
Yeah, first of all, we live, breathe, and absolutely adore the developer community's contributions back to Shopify. Like, you cannot be a platform without the developer community. You cannot serve merchants as diverse as we do without the developer community. If anything, we're leaning in very heavily with the app-based model and extensibility into what the developer community is going to unlock for both those, bespoke individual customizations that might exist at an agency level, or maybe an in-house developer that works for a merchant, all the way through to those broad distributed applications that are going to be written for, thousands to use. At the same time, we are always open forum. We create a lot of places for developers to come back and give us feedback, to use our offering, to use our APIs, use our tech, and then tell us how it's working for them, where it's really doing well, where it's falling short. And I think that everyone will find that we're quite responsive to that kind of feedback. We've been running, constant Discord sessions, getting feedback with AMAs and such, which I'm sure many people watching this video will have probably participated in. And so we adore you. We want you to always be open with us, and then you will see us respond.
Well said. And I think I'll just add and repeat what I said earlier, which is this is a rapidly evolving space. So if you formed an opinion 6 months ago, please go and revisit some of those documentations capabilities, rewatch or watch the latest videos from Jan. He'll have his job cut out for the next 6 months. Will keep you busy. So just like staying on top of all the latest and greatest, because it is evolving, it is changing rapidly. As Mani teased, in just a couple of weeks, there'll be a slew of announcements that will dramatically change the cost curve and the complexity curve of developing these applications, plus new capabilities. So, and we're not done. We're far from done.
Okay, super exciting times. And yeah, I say one more time, thanks so much for taking the time. I really appreciate that. And I'm pretty sure many other people out there would as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you.